that we're running out of oil. I don't have the time this afternoon to go into too much detail there. I've got a full DVD on the subject out there, Peak Oil, Myth or Reality. There is more oil on this planet than we know what to do with. One of the whole purposes of the Gulf Wars was to keep the Iraqi oil in the ground. Because there is so much oil in Iraq that when Saddam was running the show there, the concern was that Saddam, because he had so much oil, brought it onto the market and keep the price suppressed. And the US needs a high price in oil because oil is still currently just about traded in US dollars. And they need other countries to have US dollars so that they can buy US goods, arms. The US only has one product that it manufactures today in any volume, arms, military equipment. That's why the US needs war. It needs war because that's the only industry that it's got. And the current mythology that's being put around is that America was no longer self-sufficient in oil from the mid-70s. That is just so wrong. America had all the oil it needed, but it needed to find a way to get dollars into the overseas market so that people could buy US products. So they used the excuse of the 1973 Middle East War, and Kissinger persuaded OPEC, in the guise of Sheikh Yamani of Saudi Arabia and the Shah of Persia, to raise prices by 400% and blame it on the Middle East War. And of course they said, well, okay, if that's what you want, you're our major customer, you're the one that's paying. Who are we to say no? But of course they had all this money coming in, and what did they do with it? Spend it on arms. And funnily enough, the country that gets the most benefit from US overseas aid is also in the Middle East. It's Israel. Israel gets 85% of all US overseas aid. And funnily enough, over the last 25 years, the amount of money that the US has given Israel in US aid is actually completely identical to the amount of money that the US pays Saudi Arabia for its oil. So what's it doing? Maintaining the balance. It's making sure that there's equal forces there. Yeah? This is a quote from which I absolutely relate to, written by Jeremy Corsi in his book Black Gold Stranglehold. He says, oil companies are making record $100 billion annual profits, not because oil is scarce, but because we believe it is. So you're paying, $1.20 or something or whatever at the pump now for a litre. And by the way, the government is absolutely desperate for you to keep buying petrol and diesel. You know why? Because 80 pence a litre is tax. I mean, all this stuff about green, it's, forked tongue. Don't look what I'm saying, Well, don't look what I'm doing, just listen to what I'm saying. 80 pence a litre going on tax to fund their agenda. Just look at what's happened to the oil companies' stock price over the last few years. People are making out like bandits. And people in the oil industry, of course, they're going to stay quiet. I mean, one of my ex-colleagues, he's an officer of Schlumberger today. So what I'm going to tell you is in the public domain because all stock trades of officers have to be reported. And last year, he made a stock trade of his stock options, and he earned more in that stock trade than he had earned in salary with the company in the last 30 years. So when I called him and I said, Mark, what's your view on peak oil? He said, yes. He said, long may it continue. He doesn't, this guy probably has more knowledge of oil-filled reservoirs in the world than almost anybody else. He knows exactly what the deal is. This is classic manipulation. It's creating artificial scarcity. So the New World Order. Let's have a look at where they are trying to go here. Their agenda is a new world, and the occult phrase they use is the quest for the New Jerusalem. And this has some incredible significance. And these guys believe that they can achieve their agenda, but they're only going to achieve it providing they can keep humanity in slave mode. The other phrase for the New Jerusalem is Zion. And you have a group of people, or groups of people around the world, who actually believe that they are directly descended from the lost tribes of Israel. And in the UK, the British Zionists believe that they are the descendants of the lost tribe of Ephraim. In the US, They believe that they are the lost tribe, or the descendants of the lost tribe of Massanet. And these guys are actually trying to create a situation where they will effectively be in the ascendancy in the new world order. Now, some of what I'm going to show you now, I think, is probably going to perhaps take a little bit of time to absorb. But, you know, one thing I would say is that please don't take anything I say at face value. That's not my agenda at all. All I can do is sow seeds. You know, at the end of the day, no one can tell you the truth. You have to, you know, realize the truth for yourself. So this is really just about sowing seeds and giving you some ideas of where to go in your searches. Why do you think that one of the outcomes of the current war is that the Iraqi Baghdad Museum was looted and they got special forces going out into the hinterland of Iraq, specially tasked to seek and destroy the ancient artifacts, because it might just call into question their version of religion. By the way, I mean, I've got to tell you that the manipulation is obviously working very well. We heard one of the speakers yesterday lay blame for the Kuwait oil fires at the door of Saddam. The Kuwait oil fires, and I'm not talking, this is not received wisdom, I was there. The Kuwait oil fires were started by the US Special Forces. Why? Who do you think was going to get all the money for putting them out? $7 billion paid for by the Emir of Kuwait. How do I know this? Because I was in Iraq 2 days after the end of hostilities. I was driving around the oil fields in the south of the country with a military escort, because we were looking at the logistics and how we were actually going to tackle the firefighting exercise, because this was something beyond anything that the oil industry had ever had to deal with before. And there were bodies of Iraqi soldiers around many of the wells. I mean, it was very obvious. They'd been defending the oil wells. It was the American Special Forces that had started the fires. And it took me until 2003 to get corroboration of that, when I discovered that there was a veterans organization in the US of the Special Forces, and a number of their members were acknowledging that they were part of the team that was starting those fires. History's written by the winners. So this is a campaign to completely wipe out anything that might in any way detract from the official version of religious history. And this is why. Because as we heard yesterday in one of the talks, I think it was the film clip showing Linda Moulton Howe, where she was acknowledging that within the US, because of their conversations with ETs or whatever, it was accepted that mankind was a created race. Well, funnily enough, that's exactly what is written in many, many mythologies all around the world. And more people, of course, were becoming familiar as the texts were being decoded with the Sumerian texts. And here we see, you know, the story, we see the accounts of how, you know, the Anunnaki came here and were here and basically genetically engineered what we recognize today as humanity. Genetically engineered humanity as effectively a slave race, with every intention of wiping them out. But there were two major players here, Enlil and Enki. Enki is acknowledged in the Sumerian text as being the true creator of man, with his partner, Ninhursag. Enlil, on the other hand, was the guy who wanted to wipe humanity out. So we have all these flood myths all around the world where, you know, somebody was given the information to build a vehicle, an ark. In fact, in the Sumerian text, it's a submarine. It's not the animals going in 2 by 2, it's the DNA. To protect life on this planet from the coming cataclysm. So Enki, having passed on the information to Noah, or in the Sumerian myths, Upnapishtim, created an opportunity for this created race to continue.